a bid to persuade the central government to open the border. New rules announced in late October saw the scrapping of most quarantine exemptions. Science reverberated around the world as governments scrambled for strategies to curb the spread of COVID-19. This mantra has been used by officials everywhere to justify policies and evade responsibility for blunders. But scientists don't always agree, and governments tend to select the advice that best suits their agendas. It is usually more about pursuing politics than following science. The latest measures in Hong Kong do not appear to be necessary to protect public health. They are driven more by a desire to align the city's policies with mainland China in a bid to persuade the central government to open the border. New rules announced in late October saw the scrapping of most quarantine exemptions for travellers deemed crucial to Hong Kong's economy. There were also tougher requirements for the release of COVID-19 patients. The world's toughest quarantine regime is being further tightened, even though the city has not had a local transmission since May. It seems crazy, but as Chief Executive Carrie Lam explained, these are all measures taken to make the central government more confident in allowing us to resume border travel. Only members of the groups that benefited from the quarantine exemptions, such as company directors and diplomats, are likely to complain about their removal. But the business sector is not surprisingly unhappy about yet another tightening of restrictions. The new requirements for COVID patients are of more concern. Previously, they were allowed to leave hospital when their viral load fell to a level so low they were considered unable to transmit the virus. That approach appears to be following the science. Now patients must have 2 negative tests within 24 hours and spend another 2 weeks at a quarantine facility. Epidemiologist Benjamin Cowling has branded this ridiculous and unethical. The Hong Kong University professor's remarks on Twitter prompted a rebuke from Health Minister Sophia Chan. In a letter to the Post, she gave a spirited defence of the city's zero-case strategy and said measures taken by the government in the community's interest must not be called unethical. I will leave it to the medical experts to argue about whether the approach is ethical, but there is no doubt it involves detaining patients for up to 24 days, even when the risk of them transmitting the virus is low. Chan, in her letter, said risks are low but not zero. The removal of a person's liberty is a serious infringement on their rights. It should only be done if necessary to protect public health. Such a drastic step should certainly not be taken to achieve a political objective such as opening the border. An approach based on an abundance of caution is not good enough. The measure does not appear to be either logical or proportionate. 3 weeks in quarantine is still imposed on travellers from high-risk countries. The government has revealed 99% of imported cases in recent months were picked up in the first 2 weeks. One expert said the 1% level could be tolerated were it not for Hong Kong's zero-case strategy. Perhaps our top officials should spend 3 weeks in quarantine, preferably in one of the cheaper hotels. It might give them more insight into the impact of the policy. Health Minister Chan's letter also said the city's risk tolerance had been lowered as the pandemic rages overseas. The tight quarantine approach has had wide support in Hong Kong, especially among those who feel no need to travel abroad. The measures, however, affect people's mental health, infringe on their liberty, and damage the city's international status. A better balance needs to be struck. Hong Kong has had no locally transmitted cases for months. Now it is moving from a zero-case policy to one of zero risk. The city is paying a high price for its pursuit of an open border with mainland China, and there is no end in sight.